Whoa! Welcome to the What's Already podcast, where we fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-hosts Mattson.
Yeah, better than dead.
And Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead and hit that follow, subscribe, like, bell notification, all those buttons that'll help you keep up with our episodes, new content, TV shows, video game stuff. We're doing so much crap right now. Again, it's, you need to hit that button so you can keep up with it. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. We are here today to review Geronimo, an American legend. It was released December 10th, 1993. It was written by John Milius and Larry Gross. It's directed by Walter Hill. It stars Jason Patric, Gene Hackman, Robert Duvall, Wes Studi, Matt Damon, Rodney A. Grant, Kevin Teige, Steve Rivas, Carlos Palomino, Stuart Proud Eagle Grant, and Stephen McCaddy. The story of the Apache chief and his armed resistance to the U.S. government's subjugation of his people. This was an Alec choice. This is
an Alec choice. Absolutely.
This is an Alec choice and voted on by the man, Charles. I don't know if he's changed his name again, but I'll double check before we get to Alec's little outro so we can make sure that we give the man his props where they're due. But so let's talk about it then.
Man, I had high hopes. Not gonna lie. Remember,
oh my gosh,
we were recording,
impossible.
We were recording something else like a few days, just a few days ago, because we do this on Thursday and we do other stuff on Mondays. Oh, it's for what do you call it? The Last of Us.
Mm-hmm.
And I love history.
Apparently not.
I mean, I should say that I don't love the history of the story. I should say it's pretty sad, but I love just history in general. I was excited about what was presented here, and it let me down. But I shouldn't have been surprised because this was an Alec recommended movie, and Charles always gangs up on me, so they knew something I did.
Yeah, we like cinema. You do not. I'm convinced you don't like movies, to be honest.
I mean,
there is no way to please you.
At least it was in color and a modern aspect ratio.
And when I say, when I give my rating on that, I mean, the cat's out of the bag. I'm going to give this a 2.5. It's not I'm not here to say this is an atrocious movie, but it was extremely slow. Extremely slow. Slow.
Is that the only problem you had with it? That it was slow?
Slow, not enough action.
Not enough action. So the Apache's getting kicked off their land. Not enough action for you. Sorry, there weren't more blood and guts, but this was a very one-sided kind of time in history.
I don't know. I just don't know. It didn't translate well to cinema. Reading a book about it or reading about it in a history textbook. It didn't translate well
to cinema. So you don't like the way that Wes Studi portrayed Geronimo, who's probably one of the best, if not the best, Native American actor out there.
I'm not saying he was a bad actor. The acting was great.
No, so you just don't like the Geronimo story.
The subject matter just wasn't presented in a compelling enough nature, so much so that
what could be more compelling?
So much so that I went to ChatGPT to write a scathing short review for me, and
so you couldn't write it yourself, so you had to call in the AI to do it for you. Is what you're saying? You couldn't find enough reason to hate this movie, so you had to call in an AI bot to do it for you.
I can't wait to see Charles comment on YouTube, because last time he was like, well, that shit was awkward.
It was quite funny. I did a lot of different types. So this is what I told. I said, I want you to act as a movie critic. You will develop an engaging, creative, and short movie review. The most important aspect I want you to emphasize is how slow and boring this movie was. It almost put me to sleep. And then I wish there was more action scenes. Do be sure to mention that the acting was quite good, though. And so then I told it to request to write the movie review for Geronimo. So this is what it said. It said, Geronimo, an American legend, is a snooze fest that nearly put me to sleep. Despite the impressive performances of the actors, the movie lacked the excitement and thrill that I was hoping for. The plot was slow and uneventful, and the lack of action scenes left me feeling unsatisfied. If you're looking for a movie that would keep you on the edge of your seat, this is not it. On the positive side, the acting was quite good, but that alone cannot save this movie from being a disappointment. I would not recommend wasting your time or money on this movie. Heard it here first. ChatGPT. Boom. Scathing review.
My gosh. You are impossible. Slow, not enough action. Oh, the murder and genocide of an entire people, not enough action for you, Mattson?
I mean,
not enough gunfights?
So I guess I was going to say, so I'm trying to think about it and go back to, and did we review, I can't even remember now what we reviewed and what we haven't. We reviewed Tombstone, right? Like we did Tombstone at some point, didn't we? Am I crazy for thinking that we did that?
I don't know if we actually have.
We've talked about it at the very least, though, right? Like
that's a good one.
Yeah, like
nope, no Tombstone.
But I think about like this movie and the Westerns, because really, to be honest, like Tombstone came out very similar time to this. This movie couldn't have been made without previous, like good old Kevin Costner made this movie possible. Like, truth be told, this movie was in development hell for like 3 years, but because Dances with Wolves was made and was so successful, this one was able to be made. Now I think about a comparison of like Dances with Wolves, which is also a fantastic movie. Now that's a slow movie. Like that one's exhaustingly slow, and it's like 3 hours long. So not only is it slow and boring comparatively, it's also really long. Like I think of this one, and I think if you take out the fact that I think Tombstone's like a 2 hour and 20-minute movie, it has similar action scenes to me and a volume of action that Tombstone does. So like for me, like that's the part that I don't understand, like I don't get, or I guess I should say that I don't agree with the lack of action, because this one to me, like every 15-20 minutes there was a gunfight of some sort, there was there was some pieces of war action, but for me it was also like the narrative and the human interaction like that makes this movie so good is the comparisons of the different characters, right? Like you have Jason Patrick playing this, obviously I think they're trying to make him like the central character for how everyone should be, right? He understands that he has certain obligations to being a military, to his country, whatever you want to say, and then he also understands that the Apache are human beings as well, and in building a country, bad things are done in order to do that, but tries to still treat them with as much respect and dignity as possible. And so, but then you watch that with the comparison of someone like Robert Duvall, who some would look at as also technically in a way a good person based on certain aspects of his, character and what he does and how he treats people. But at the same time, he certainly wasn't Gatewood, right? And then you have, again, Gene Hackman playing Crook. Like for me, the characters in this movie are some of the best written because of like you can find aspects of yourself, I think, in each one, maybe, or find someone that you relate to the most. And I think there's ones, and then there's ones you're like, I probably should relate completely to like Gatewood, right? But if you're honest with yourself, probably more in the line with a Sieber, because that's probably where it goes, or even a Crook, where it's, I don't know. That was kind of my thought on this movie, is like why I like it so much. Is it's a really character driven like story of different human beings and how they view the world, and it's just wrapped in this very true, and according to a lot of people that I were reading about with this one, very accurate, though the story itself about Geronimo less accurate, right? But the actual tribulations and the things that the Native Americans had to go through during this time, and especially the Apache, very much more accurate than the story itself. So that's why I liked it. I just think, but I get, look, it does have slow moments because there's a lot of exposition and a lot of dialogue versus like gunfights. But I am surprised, Mattson, that you think it had not enough because
I mean, hearing you talk about it more, like there's slow movies I really like take Wyatt Earp, for instance. That's a phenomenally long movie, and I'm sure a lot of people hate that movie or really don't like it because it's drawn out in some places, but I really like that movie, for instance. Or and so it's just a gut reaction. I've done this more often now for me, and if I was to recommend this to the people in my sphere of influence, besides probably the two of you, uh, this is one where I follow in like Javier's camp. If I told Javier to watch this movie, I'm pretty confident he's gonna be bored as fuck watching this. Now, if I told Ian to watch this movie, I think Ian's really gonna like this because he's cerebral. He'd think about a lot of things that you said, and I find for me, I straddle that line, but it's hard to articulate why it just wasn't compelling to me because the subject matter of this movie are things that I absolutely enjoy. I love movies that are deeply rooted in history, like the Patriot or the Braveheart, but they are even far less true than what this movie holds to. And those movies do it for me where this one does not. And I'm just not good enough to articulate or have to ask myself deep down what's the major differences there. But it didn't land for me in the way that I was hoping. And part of it maybe because I definitely had some good expectations. I was really excited. I saw it like the movie poster and everything. I was like, oh man, you guys even heard? I was like, this movie's gonna be good. And then like
yes, I was just
let down. Like it didn't captivate me. And there's maybe not a better way to say it than that I wasn't feeling it.
Fair enough.
No, you're wrong.
100%.
So I love Native American history, culture, and everything. Part of that's because I'm engaged to Oceana, who is actually a direct descendant of Geronimo. So I already liked Geronimo beforehand.
That's cool.
But she's actually, her family was extras in one of the other Geronimo movies. That's how Jay. So, but I love this story. And this story does a very good job of telling what's going on. But also it's the little bits and pieces that they put in there that they don't directly point at, but have an effect. Right. So when General Crook is talking to Sieber and he talks about how the army is the only hope for the Apache, that's because the corporations, the miners, everything, they wanted the Apache gone and dead. Crook was trying to preserve them on a reservation, not the right choice or option, but he wanted that instead of having them be obliterated. And then there's, a very powerful scene where near the beginning of the movie, before Geronimo busts out of the reservation, the army comes and they end up killing a medicine man. So the thing with medicine men is not only are they like spiritual leaders and everything like that, they're also the keepers of history. So the army would use any excuse they could to go find a reason for a medicine man or a seer to be, disturbing the peace for whatever reason they could, because they were the keepers of the history. Native American cultures, a lot of them never really wrote anything down. So a lot of their history disappeared without these medicine men to pass it on to the next in line. And so you have this not only pushing them off their land, but pushing their culture into obscurity. And so it's all these little things that add up to realize just how hopeless Geronimo was. And still, for over like 2 decades, he ran circles around the United States Army and the Mexican Army. And this dude was old during this time. Like he was getting up there, 40s and 50s, and he's running around the mountains of Mexico, absolutely humiliating the army, which is why they made this great deal and then went back on it. They were never going to give him a deal, but they couldn't catch him otherwise.
Yeah.
But I absolutely love it because it puts the United States of America in a really bad light, but it's not an unearned bad light by any means. Holy smokes. So it's a really powerful movie and an amazing one. And I don't know why Matt's going to give it 2.5. Middle
I just
of the road, my butt.
I love reading, and a lot of what's presented, I think a historical fiction book that I would have read that was accurate, but had some expose. Obviously, they took some liberties. I probably would have really enjoyed that. I'm sure it would have. I don't know. On screen, it didn't do it for me.
Yeah, and I will say it is by far the best of the Geronimo movies. I don't know there was like 3 of them within like 2 or 3 years, and because the Dances with Wolves really triggered like these movies that were, because it was really bad, because back in like early film, everybody gets mad nowadays about whitewashing, but you want to talk about whitewashing back in the day,
40s and 50s.
Yeah, like well, and so I was reading a story that, interesting tidbit about this movie is I was reading it, and the director was talking about when he was trying to make it, he would go to studios and they were like, we like the story, we like the idea, but in true Hollywood form, because they're looking to sell tickets, and to sell tickets, they want to slap a big name on there. So they kept trying to say, we'll make it, but instead of, and they, he had, when he was doing it, like he always had like a West study as like top choice, and the studios were like, no, we want you to put like one of the big action stars at the time. So, and if you think about it, it was made in 93. Around that time, you're talking about like a Schwarzenegger, or probably you'd be more likely to see like a who's the other whack? Sly, like Sylvester Stallone. And I'm like, and they literally would ask him, why can't we can just throw some makeup on him, and I'm like, oh my God. Because that's terrible. And so one of the things that this movie did do, based on the fact that it was able to be made, and really Dances with Wolves started it too, because all of the Native American characters in that movie were played by actual members of the tribe that they were representing, for the most part. Now, this movie, they had a guy, and I don't know his name, I was reading the article, but they brought in a guy, this consultant from the Apache tribe, and he went through, and not all of, because of the fact that there aren't very many Apache left in the world, unfortunately. They didn't have a lot to choose from, so there were other tribes that were invited, but he would not let them be part of the movie if they were not registered with their tribe. So they would get a lot of Native Americans that would come in and say, I'm Native American, and he would ask what tribe, and they would say, well, I don't know. And he's like, I get it, you are. It's not that I'm questioning that, but we're not casting someone unless they're registered with their tribe. And so it was really interesting. And I think, and I've said it a few times, I think it's bullshit that we, like, in certain situations, I get it, but if you're going to portray it in a way like this, where you're actually going to have someone playing Geronimo, it needs to be someone that represents that culture, right? Same with like there was a movie a while back that what's her face, Black Widow chick, I can't remember her name off the top of my head now, but
Scarlett Johansson
played, and it was a very Asian influenced show, and I was like, but why? Like, and I wasn't mad about it. Like, I get it, this was like fiction, it's not like you're talking about like this story where you're representing someone that was real. I think that's a very different than adjusting like a comic book story whose lead was Asian, and you want to have a lead that somebody that's going to draw tickets. That's very different to me. Now, I get people were upset, and that's fine. Each to their own. But in this situation, like a white dude, like, because one of the Geronimo movies that was made in like the 40s or 50s or something, clearly a white dude with a strong jawline playing Geronimo, and I'm like, yikes. That's a hard pill for me to swallow, and I'm a white dude, so I can only imagine what that's like when you're native or any member of any culture that where you go and you're like, that's not,
that doesn't look right.
Yeah, it doesn't. What the hell's going on right now, right? So I thought that was really cool when I was reading that article, that this kind of really changed, and those kind of rules, and a lot of the consultants have really kind of leaned into that as they move forward with, especially with a lot of the history of America stories when you're talking about the indigenous peoples. So I thought that was good.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really kind of cool that it's a study, right? Because I think what might have tipped over these big execs was Last of the Mohicans.
Yep, that was another one.
He's in there, and it's like,
And
oh,
that
okay, this
is
guy
a great movie.
Power. Yes, it is. In addition to Geronimo being a great fucking movie.
Yeah, Last of the Mohicans has one of the most iconic songs.
Last of the Mohicans has one of the most iconic songs ever.
No, I love Last of the Mohicans too. But again, that's another one that's even longer and to me a little slower than this movie.
Yes. So anyway, Mattson,
I
all
say
you're
great
doing is
movie. I haven't seen it in
hurting
forever,
yourself.
so I feel like we did it now. I'd probably have a different opinion.
That one was also too because like Daniel Day-Lewis plays the lead, and I'm like, I mean, it fits the story a little better, but still, I was like, okay, kind of.
But no, like, I mean, I appreciate the accuracy with this, right?
Yeah.
With Geronimo, and probably the most gut-wrenching part for me is when you have all of the Apache scouts, right? The guys who signed up with the army because they believed in it. They kind of ostracize themselves from their own culture, realizing that, you know, they almost have to adapt in their mind, right? Like, this is it. This is our new life. We have to adapt. We have to kind of change the way we live. So we're going to join up with the army. We're going to help try and make this as easy as possible. And then in true army fashion, during the taking of the West, or the, you know, taming of the West, I guess, they just completely strip them of their military obligations, we'll say, and they take everyone who was part of Geronimo's tribe and ship him off to prison with him. Like, that's a very nice, hey, thanks for helping, fuck you.
Yeah.
And they, you know, took the White Mountain Apache and everybody else, and they stuck them back on their reservations. And you could just see it. I don't know the guy's name who plays that one character.
Steve Rivas.
Steve Rivas. But you can see it like in his portrayal, especially on the train near the end, where he's like, shoot, you were right. And it's almost that kind of wistful thinking, like, maybe if I hadn't been this way, you know, maybe you could have continued on, or if we could have united people and everything like that. Because that's just sad. Like that kind of wistful, like, what if moment almost.
Yeah. Yeah, Steve Rivas. I love him, like, because he plays one of my favorite characters in a very stupid movie, The Longest Yard remake with Adam Sandler.
Oh, that's the announcer?
He's babyface Bob with the big scar on his face. He's like, mean machine. Machine. I love him. It's so good. Anyway, yeah, that's Steve Rivas. He's been in a lot too, like more than you'd think. But he was to be honest, in this movie, he's my favorite character in this movie, because he's straddling that line, right? And I think one of the lines that sticks out to me the most every time I watch this movie is when they're climbing up the mountain, and it's him and Jason Patrick's character, and they get up there and they're threatening him, saying, hey, you're the reason that you're with the enemy and whatnot, and you're going to ruin the Apache, tribe. And he says what he believes you are, right? And I was like, wow, what a line, what a situation that you have, because it's obvious, like, he sticks with the army because he understands. And here's the sad part, like, should what happened to the indigenous peoples of this country happen? Absolutely not. However, when you think about it from a certain perspective, if it hadn't happened that way, I don't know that we would have any indigenous people.
We wouldn't
left in this country at all, because to your point, Alec, there were many people outside of the government that would have just been plenty happy. And we see pieces of it in this movie to just completely wipe out the indigenous peoples from the country and just be done with it. Because then you don't have to bother with it at all, right? There's no resources. There's no.
You don't have to get a reservation, 40 acres and 2 mules or whatever that deal was.
40 acres and a mule. 2 for them, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just, like, and that's the craziest piece, is you start to think of, look, it was, and again, should it have? Absolutely not. That's my stance. We did terrible shit to these people, but it was going to happen, and it could have been a little worse. You know what I mean? Like, to the point that, yes, there needs to be it needs to be a conversation. There's many conversations like this that need to be happening. But so it really puts, when you think about that perspective, it really leans into seeing that character and going, yeesh, Chato wasn't necessarily wrong. Because at the same time, even when he's in the train, like you're talking about, and he's saying, I should have fought with you. Again, like, I understand that too, but that doesn't allow for the continuation of that culture at all.
It's gonna end bad.
Yeah, and so it's really a terrible, thing to revisit in history, but it's also an interesting conversation to say, man, what's the alternative? Who's right? Who's wrong? It's just, but that's the other thing I like was there's no heroes in this movie at all, which you didn't see that very often back in the early 90s films. There was usually a hero, and even this, they talk about Geronimo, an American legend, but at the end of the day, even he wasn't a hero to his people, sure, but he even admits at some point, I don't remember to which character, but maybe it was a general, but he's like, yeah, I killed women and children because you did.
Yeah.
And it's like,
fair's fair.
Yeah. And so to say that he was a good person all around, no, I mean, he originally got started, and most of his anger comes from the story that you don't hear until the end, and that being the Mexican soldiers killing his family. And what they didn't portray on this is he was much more brutal than they show in this. He went a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, understandably, when he came home and his family was murdered, and he went nuts on the Mexican army. And then that translated into the U.S. Army as well later on. But yeah, so I like that aspect, that there's no real heroes here. There's people doing what they feel is the right thing and in the way that they need to do it, but there's no heroes.
Not even close.
No. I will say one thing that bothered me. Sorry, Alec.
No, you go.
One, and this is really nitpicky for me, but Matt Damon's voiceover, like, I like Matt Damon a lot.
I was going to ask you that, because
but
I know
Matt
sometimes
Damon's,
you don't.
It's rare that I don't like Matt Damon, but Matt Damon's voiceover in this movie, and I liked him when he's on screen, but his voiceover grated on my nerves for some reason. I don't know if it's just his voice is not built for good voiceover, but like every time he was narrating, I'm like, oh, shut up.
Was
Like,
it just too kind? You're like,
no, it was the tone, I think. Like, for me, like, I think it would have been better if you had like Gene Hackman or even Jason Patrick, who's got a very strange voice, but it's like, I love Jason Patrick's voiceover in Sleepers, right? So I think you could have easily translated and made him the voiceover, though I get the idea is that it's coming from this young soldier who's seeing all of this with fresh eyes from this
whatever
new
happened
angle.
to Jason Patrick? He definitely burned hot there for a minute, but is he acting?
I don't know,
anymore?
not based on what you rated Sleepers in Geronimo.
No, he likes Sleepers.
No, I like Sleepers.
I was gonna say he rated Sleepers pretty high.
Sleepers was a good movie.
No,
he's still acting
terribly.
He's still acting. He's just not. He's not on the radar.
Oh no, I mean, he's not. He's by far not like A-list or anything.
Yeah, I liked him in this movie. He's just, his delivery is so different, but it's intriguing.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems with. I'll tell you what. First of all, I'll tell you what ruined his career. Speed 2. That's what ruined his career. Because he was still early on in his career at that point. In fact, it was the next movie after Sleepers that he did. And that was the end of Jason Patrick. However, the other problem with Jason Patrick from an acting perspective is he's the same character. Like, because he doesn't have, his tone and inflection it can't be different. He doesn't do like dialects. He doesn't do any, like, the big actors that you think of that are still around and have been acting for 20, 30 years can change it up a little bit and really kind of mold into a character. Jason Patrick's not that guy. Like, he's just that quiet, soft-spoken, kind of monotone at times. Just his piercing eyes are insane.
That is true.
Yeah. But I did like him in this. But Matt Damon's voiceover just drove me crazy.
No, I can see that. It was a little bit much at times, especially young Matt Damon. I think if you had older Matt Damon, a bit better. But he was still pretty new to the
I'm
acting
sure he
scene
probably doesn't like it. He listens to it, he's like, oh, God. Like, yeah.
That and his weird patchy goatee. I was like, wait, what? I've seen this man with a beard. How'd that happen?
Very good point.
Yeah. But typically I like it. But I did, like I said, I love this movie, to be honest, like just because it didn't shy away from anything either, which is in the 90s, it was shocking. Most of the time they seriously shied away from a lot of stuff.
Yeah, uncomfortable conversations are uncomfortable to have, JJ.
I know. I like them though.
Me too.
Yeah.
I love the West, though. I love this time period. I'm always a sucker for it. I told Tay after, I was like, man, if there's a time period I'd probably go live in earlier on, like the Wild Wild West is up there for me.
Oh, dude, you'd be dead so quick from dysentery.
Me too. I like the idea of I'm with you, Mattson. Like I love Westerns.
I like
the idea of it. But that was a law. You got to be a heartless bastard to do well in that time frame, especially in the West. Like if you're in that time frame, but you're living in Boston, you're probably a little more okay.
Oh, yeah, it's not the West though.
Yeah, you're in that time frame. You're out in Tucson or in Arizona,
Oklahoma, Arizona.
You're in trouble. I will say the other thing that I really laugh at, and this is from a perspective of someone that's lived in Arizona. So, Alec, I'm sure you have the same thought. Like when they show early on in the movie, like these rolling sand dunes and they're rolling through it, I'm like, that's not accurate. There's like one place in southern Arizona on the California border that has like that kind
off the 8.
Yeah, exactly. Like I've got pictures of me sledding down the sand dunes, but there's like one place where it looks like that. I'm like, they had to have gone to like the Sahara, or like they had to have gone to like Southern California, and they probably went to Imperial County. That's probably where they went, was Imperial County, California, to film that shot. But I was like, technically it's on the border of Arizona, but Arizona's not that. It's like rock hard dust.
What do they call it? Caliche, I think is the proper terminology. Is like miserable to dig through. And that's why Arizona doesn't have a lot of basements, because it's so hard to get through.
Yeah, it's terrible. And it's not like sand dunes are cool and they're pretty. Arizona, most of it in southern Arizona, it's not pretty. And especially the reservation areas, like it's not developed and it's not. Yeah, like I spent a lot of time on 2 reservations, the Tohono O'odham reservation down south, and then up north. I don't remember the name of the reservation, but it's Navajo reservation. And that, wow. Well, and then I was on the Havasupai in that reservation, and that one was the hardest one. That's the part. I don't know if you guys, I'm sure, Alec,
I've been on that reservation.
Have you?
When I was a missionary, I didn't live there, but I went there for 10 exchanges, and it's a very, unforgettably humbling experiences, I should say.
Yeah, both the reservations that I was on in northern Arizona, up in Flagstaff area, that was some of the most heart-wrenching, because it's the third world in the United States, and it still is. Like, especially, I think it's the Havasupai, the one that's up north. It's not the Navajo one in northern Arizona, but there's another one that
Yavapai?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yavapai. That one, literally, I drove on and I was like, I am in Central America, is what this feels like, with the I don't remember what they're called, but like when you watch a movie and the towns are stacked on, the houses are stacked on top of each other down a hill, like that's. And so for me, like I think living there and having spent a lot of time there for 2 years, like I watch a movie like this and I think of it very differently. And that may be, even going in, and I said this the other day to you, Mattson, this movie is a little slow at times for me, but I think the subject matter hits way close to home, because I spent the better part of 6 months on the Navajo reservation in near Flagstaff. And it was I loved every minute of spending time in that culture and that people. That is the kindest, most accepting, like, that I've ever been a part of. And so like there was never a house that I went to that I wasn't invited in and had some awesome fry bread with some, you know what I mean? Like, it was just absolutely amazing. And yet it's like a different world when you cross into the res. It's like, wow, how does somewhere like this exist in supposedly one of the most advanced, wealthy countries in the world? And the answer is we close our eyes to it.
It's easy if you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah. It's nuts. It's absolutely bonkers. So I think that's why every time I watch a movie like this, like there's a piece of me that goes back there, because I was there every day for almost 6 months, and it was just the best for me. But at the same time, I met a couple of old timers that were around for some of the back half of being displaced and moved around, and it's there's some gut wrenching stories that you're just like, wow. So it does open your eyes a little bit. And I'm sure you hear all of that stuff, Alec, with Oshi and her family.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Absolutely. They've got stories upon stories, because even after you had the forcing onto the reservations, then you had the boarding schools that came by.
Yeah.
The genocide against the indigenous peoples have been going on for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And it's, just a complete almost repressing of culture, simply because it makes us all feel a little bit guilty inside.
Yeah.
A little bit of, oh, that's too bad. I didn't do it, but okay, if I don't pay attention to it, then nobody did it.
Yeah. Well, and if we can make them more like us,
then
I don't have to feel bad at all. We did them a favor, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the forced Christianity, I think the forced Christianity was one of those things that was really hard too when I was there, because they would talk about the fact that they would go to the church, and they had all these different churches that the denominations that they would talk about. And I was like, they were like, yeah, we go for different reasons that I'm not going to say on here, but I was like, we don't. And then they would tell about their spiritual views. And I was like, yep. And that was it. And everybody on here knows now that I have no belief in anything around. I am at minimum agnostic, probably atheist more than anything else, but I also have a deep respect for their spiritual beliefs. I learned a lot, and that was part of the reason that I started to go, I think that's more along the lines of what I think about, than I do Christianity for for that, where there's a God, per se, what we believe in or what most Christians believe in, versus there's a level of spirituality, and there is, they talk about in this movie, the one God, but it's far less of this, all powerful being saying, here's what you need to do. And it's nature in a way, and saying, figure it out. Here's what I've provided you. You take care of it, and it'll take care of you. So this is very, anyway, I'm rambling, but I just have such a deep
enjoy your
appreciation.
Keep going
for it. So nothing to do with the movie really, other than the fact that every time I watch a movie like this, I start to think about those things and remember.
And it also helps if you kind of know that with the obvious cultural blocks that you have,
sure,
that are going on clearly between General Crook and Geronimo.
Yeah.
Even though they're both trying to kind of figure the other one out, there's this huge block in between that neither one of them can seem to get across.
Yeah.
Which is a bummer, because it's well, I'm trying to help you. I don't want your help. You can leave. Just let me keep doing what I've been doing. It's no, they won't let you keep doing what you're doing. Well, why not? I don't understand why I can't keep doing what I've been doing. You came here. I was already here.
Yeah.
Type of a thing. And so it's very interesting having that kind of background of even just a spiritual difference that goes into it, and a personal belief system.
Yeah.
Adds another layer to this block.
Sure.
Yeah, I think whatever you believe in, what I think the indigenous people show is just being in tune with themselves and their surroundings, having a sense of grounding that we today, as listened to a podcast, just talking about when you look at your phone sometimes and see how much you've been on your phone, 5 hours of screen time, 7 hour, whatever it is you average per week. And you're just oh my God. And then think about all the other shows I watch, whatever it may be. And that's one of the things, being on the reservation and actually being in Ghana as well, reminding me just the sense of community that we've lost, that when I was watching this movie, it did make me think these people are connected in a struggle, in a lifestyle that I have never experienced in that way, day in and day out. And it's kind of a lost art. And I think that's why it's always important to not just scrub things out of history and hold on to things that it's hard to do, because the moment we institute technology, as we were just talking about earlier with Chat GPT, you continue to lose aspects of humanity that are so important. So yeah, for me, going back to the movie, this movie's slow, but is it thought provoking? Is it sad? Is it a story of and lessons that we need to keep together as we move forward in humanity to not make the same mistakes again? This movie does a great job bringing those things up. I just wasn't as cinematically pleasing as I wanted it to be in the moment, but there's a lot to talk about.
Does anybody know? So I have one last question before I think we probably hit some points, but the white eyes term, like I've heard a lot of the back and forth like terminology between indigenous people, the Native Americans, and white people, but like I'd never heard until this movie white eyes. Do you know where that originates from? Yeah, like every time I watch it, I keep telling myself I should really ask Mr. Google why that is, but then I never do. So, but yeah. All right, should we rate this thing?
Let's do it.
All right, Alec, your movie, you go first, buddy.
Cool. I have to offset Mattson, so this is gonna be a motherfucking 5. I love the movie. I love the story. Oh. It does such a great job at telling a very tragic story in a very tragic time and making it still easy to like sit through, right? There's some uncomfortable moments, but as a whole, it does a very good job of making it easily digestible for anybody to come in and watch it. And so I really appreciate that. Phenomenal story. I love Wes Studi. Amazing actor. And then you had the all-star cast to back him up with Jason Patric, Robert Duvall, Gene Hackman in there. So yeah, a 5. Suck it, Mattson. I will be watching it again.
All right, Mattson, rebuttal time. No.
I mean, I already said what I was going to give it. 2.5, not close to a 5. I think most of our common folk would agree it's a good movie.
You're all wrong. So.
I love Alec. I know why you and Javier are friends, buddy. Like,
where do you think I learned it from?
So when you guys get your belligerents, the feet go down and like you dig in. It's hilarious to watch, especially because Matt's he's like, okay.
Well, you guys know I'll dig my feet in when it's something that it's just not worth my time.
Yeah, if you guys didn't watch the stream of me playing The Last of Us, we started talking about Bill and Ted again. Mattson digs his heels in on Bill and Ted. That and anything that's not 4.3 or that's 4.3 aspect.
Let's talk about aspect ratio.
I love it.
I'm not trying to travel back in time. And newsflash, we've lived in color for all of our lives, so let's not do black and white. Stupid.
They lived in color before our lives too, Mattson. The world didn't go from black and white to color.
And that's what I'm saying.
Color on the film.
Because film hadn't figured that shiz out, we shouldn't have released films until we could do it in color. That's my stance.
Dude, they could do films in color. 1938. It was just cheaper to do it in black and white.
Yeah, cheaper is not always better. Let that be remembered.
Okay, well, let it be known. Mattson hates Schindler's List.
Yeah, Schindler's List. Well, it's a good movie if it was in color. I think I would have liked it even more.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. Anyway, let's talk about Geronimo some more so I can give my rating. I like this movie. Is it a perfect movie? No. There are moments where it's slow. There's some things with Matt Damon's voice that I want to like dig my ears out of, like my eardrums out of my head when he's talking. I think halfway through, I'm like, oh, shut up, Damon. Like, you drive me nuts. And then there's some, I mean, it's 1983, like, effects. You can tell, like, some of the gunshots, like the first gunshot that you see with they shoot the one, and then he's laying there and there's like a big gaping hole in his back. I was like, great. That's the first time we've seen a small entry hole, big exit hole. But then there's like weird, later on, there's like weird, there's no consistency to and I get that it's not that important, but at the same time, like there are little things that bothered me. I think the acting, of all the things about this movie that are great, it's the acting and a lot of the dialogue is really good. Also the action, the horseback riding, that stuff's hard. So watching like a Jason Patric when he's taking on the one-on-one fight, and he pulls the horse down. Unfortunately, those were real horses. So there was you could see there was a big cut on the one horse, but that was back before they did the whole no damage to any horses or whatever. But that move where he pulls the horse down to hide behind it and then jumps back on it as he's letting it back up. Like, there's a lot of training involved in that. So I really appreciated the practicality of letting these actors do some of those stunts. That's not easy to deal with. Horses are scary. Let's just be honest about that. That's very high up, and if they get pissed, you're gonna get kicked or thrown, and it hurts. Anyway, I love this movie. I love like the message. I love the story, and while it's not perfect, it does a great job. So I'm gonna give it a 4. Yeah, I think there's some things that they could have sped some things up, but that's about it for me. So there it is, 4. We're all over the map on this one, gents. But I knew Alec was going to give it a 5. I don't know that you've given anything but a 5 to any of your recommendations yet.
This one would have been a 4 if Mattson had given it an actual rating.
No,
I gave it an average movie rate. I didn't like slap it in the face.
He did that just to trigger you, dude, and I love that it does.
A 5? Like,
I thought this wasn't important to you, Mattson.
ridiculous. It's important me to be objective to our listeners that let's let them know if this is a movie that's good or not. This isn't a bad movie, but is it a 5? No.
Yeah, it is.
I'm the only objective person here.
At least JJ's being objective.
I'm the only objective person on this podcast, and I love it.
Yeah, should I probably giving it a 3 because it's a little bit better than average? I could see myself doing that, but a 5.
Okay, then I'll give it a 4.5.
No, 4.5.
Get out of here.
Alec, ridiculous.
Oh,
I think JJ is right. Every movie you recommend, you give it a 5. At least with the movies that I recommend.
Yeah, because I recommend good movies.
No. No.
Oh,
At least I recognize I may like them for reasons that are skewed to me. That doesn't mean the general public is going to feel the way that I do. You have a fallacy that you live in with movies, and especially ones with aspect ratios and non-color.
Yes, I do. They're great movies.
I love it. Okay. I got to play mediator here this whole podcast. Alec, let's take your very biased ass and tell everybody.
I'm not even done here. I was feeling fine. Laid back wasn't worth it. It's worth it to me now. This is annoying me.
Thank you for tuning in to our review of Geronimo. It's easy to see why Mattson didn't like this movie, as he is pure wide eye. This is definitely worth the watch, and share the experience with a friend because it is a great movie. Welcome to February, guys. And so far, it has been a great year for movies. Watch and some high ratings on every single movie Mattson has missed.
Oh, man.
Seems like a pattern for me, but JJ has challenged me to be nice this year, and I mean it to give it the old college try. Guys, the biggest news that we have going on right now is JJ live streaming The Last of Us Part 1, playing the game in line with the episodes from the hit show on HBO. We are having a great group of people engaging with us, including our wonderful patron. I hope you didn't change your name. Black and white and aspect ratio 4/3. I think that's what it was last time. I'm not sure. Okay, good. Speaking of our fabulous patron of the podcast, you, sir, are a delight, and we appreciate you. If you would like to have more control over the content released via voting rights and personal requests, as well as getting shout outs during every outro, Patreon is the place to go and be. If you are just here for some good content or whatever it is Mattson has been doing, you can find us on every major platform, including Stitcher, Ghana, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We appreciate your support. And now I will turn it back over to the Wizard of Whack, the modern Beowulf, JJ.
Man, the salt in the womb is deep today. It never hurt more to be white than right now.
Oh, hey, yeah.
I love it. This is the first time I haven't been the roast guy in his follow. So I'm
not only have I got Charles beating down my door, I've got Alec living in my backyard, just throwing a hissy fit, digging holes.
Dude,
that was good stuff. That was the best use of the term wide eye ever. So yeah, there it is. Our very argumentative podcast. It was fun. Sorry, Charles. I'm sure you were a little awkward at the beginning and the end again. Seriously, about died on his comment. Yeah, the first thing he says when he watched it on YouTube, what was the great dictator? He's like, well, that was awkward because you two were going at it on that one too. But with that, we appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Hasta la vista.
Cinematic out.